The Crossing Without Sky. Middle Passage. Prologue. They called it a passage, as if one shore had simply loosened its hand, and another waited with a name. But some crossings are not journeys. Some are wounds dragged across water. Some are remembered not by maps, but by breath, by wrists, by darkness, by the place where the sky should have been. This is not the story of ships. This is not the story of trade. This is not the story of empire counting itself clever. This is a recovered human harmonic from the hold beneath history, a voice from the crossing without sky. Listen gently.
I remember the sky first, not the sea, not the shouting, not the hands, the sky. It was wide above my mother's roof, wide above the cooking smoke, wide above the trees that knew our names before we learned to speak them. At night, the stars did not seem far away. They seemed like elders watching. My grandmother used to point to them and say, "There, that one remembers your grandfather. That one remembers his mother. That one remembers the child who did not live long enough to be named." I believed her because children believe the world is honest until the world proves otherwise. The morning they came, the sky was bright. That is what I cannot forgive. It should have darkened. It should have torn open. It should have warned us. But the birds still moved through it. The sun still touched the ground. The air still smelled of earth and leaf and fire. Then came running. Then came noise. Then came strangers with iron in their hands and hunger in their eyes. I will not tell you every detail. Some things should not be made into pictures. Some pain is not a lantern for strangers. But I will say this. A hand closed around my arm. Another struck my brother. My mother screamed a sound I had never heard from any living thing, and the sky remained blue. They walked us away from home, not marched, not led, walked us away like stolen breath. The path knew my feet, but my feet no longer belonged to me. We passed the tree where my sister had tied red thread after her first harvest. We passed the stone where my father sharpened blades. We passed the field where children hid in tall grass and pretended the world could not find them. The world found us. At the water, I saw the vessel. I had seen canoes. I had seen fishing boats. I had seen wood shaped by hands that loved rivers. But this thing was not made for water. It was made for disappearance. It rose against the shore like a moving prison, like a beast that had swallowed too many names and still opened its mouth for more. There were others, so many others, faces from villages I did not know, languages I almost understood, children clinging to silence, men trying not to break, women holding their grief behind their teeth, because grief, too, could be punished. We looked at one another and something passed between us. Not hope, not yet. Recognition. You are human. I am human. They are trying to make us forget. Do not forget. Then came the descent. Down, 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 away from the sun, away from the wind, away from the elders in the stars. The air changed first. It thickened. It entered the mouth badly. The dark was not empty. It had weight. Bodies pressed against bodies. Breath against breath. Iron against skin. Wood beneath us. Wood above us. And no sky. That is what I remember most. Not only the fear, the absence, the place where sky should have been. A human being is not made to live without sky. Even a prisoner above ground can look upward. Even the lost can search the horizon. Even the dying can ask the stars to carry a message. But there, Beneath the boards, the world ended inches above our faces. The universe became darkness, heat, thirst, crying, prayer, and chain. Time changed. Days did not arrive. Nights did not fall. There was only when the hatch opened. And when it closed, there was only water passed down, food forced in, bodies moved, bodies not moving. There was only the great groan of the vessel, and the sea striking its sides, as if the ocean itself were trying to break us free. Some prayed, some sang under their breath, some called names into the dark: mother, brother, child, beloved, God, ancestor, home. The words rose softly at first, then tangled together. Different tongues, different rhythms, different gods, different griefs. But in the dark, they became one thing. Not a song exactly, a holding, a net made of breath. I learned to listen for the woman beside me. I never knew her village, never knew her true name. The captors shouted one sound at her, but it was not a name. A name is given with love. What they gave was a handle. So, in my mind, I called her Morning, because even in the dark, she spoke as if light still existed somewhere. She had a child with her, a little boy, too young to understand the size of what had happened, old enough to know his mother was afraid. Sometimes he whimpered. Sometimes he asked for water. Sometimes he asked when they would go home. Morning would place her lips near his ear and whisper, "Soon?" Not because it was true, because the child needed a bridge from one breath to the next. I hated her for that at first. Soon? How could she say soon? How could she place such a fragile word inside such an endless dark? But later I understood. She was not promising land, she was promising survival. For one more heartbeat, soon breathe, soon sleep, soon wake, soon I am still here. There were men who fought, there were men who waited, there were women whose eyes burned hotter than torches. There were elders who held memory like fire hidden in ash. Do not believe anyone who tells you the stolen went quietly. Chains can silence movement. They cannot silence the will. Even in the hold, resistance lived, in a turned shoulder, in a shared mouthful, in a remembered name, in a song hummed too low for the captors to understand, in refusing, somewhere deep inside, to become the thing they imagined. Once, when the hatch opened, I saw the sky. Only a piece of it, a blade of blue. It hurt. I had not known light could wound. For a moment, I thought of my grandmother. I thought of her hand, bent with age, pointing upward. That one remembers. That one remembers. That one remembers. I wanted to ask the sky if it still knew me. I wanted to say, I am here. I have not vanished. Tell my mother, tell the trees, tell the red thread, tell the field, tell them I am still made of the place that made me. But the hatch closed, and the sky was taken again. People speak of oceans as if they separate lands. But that water did something else. It carried theft. It carried bodies. It carried names no ledger ever bothered to write. It carried mothers who did not know where their children would be sold. Fathers who would never again stand beneath familiar stars. Children who would grow into languages braided from loss and invention. It carried the beginning of a wound that would not end when land appeared. But hear this carefully. The ocean did not erase us. The darkness did not erase us. The chain did not erase us. Something crossed that water besides suffering. Memory crossed. Rhythm crossed. Prayer crossed. Skill crossed. Laughter buried deep crossed. The knowledge of seed and drum and iron and story crossed. The names of rivers crossed, even when the tongues that carried them were beaten. The dead crossed with us. The unborn crossed with us. A whole sky crossed inside people who were denied the sky above them. Morning's child stopped asking when we would go home. That was the day I feared most. Not when he cried, when he stopped. Silence in a child is a terrible thing. So I began to whisper to him. I told him about the sky over my village. I told him about a bird with a red throat. I told him about rain that came warm and sudden. I told him about my grandmother's stars. His eyes turned toward me in the dark. Do they know where we are? He asked. I did not know what to say, so I lied with all the love I had left. Yes, I told him, they are following. And maybe it was not a lie. Maybe memory follows where bodies are dragged. Maybe love does not obey distance. Maybe the stars seen by our ancestors were the same stars waiting above the far shore, even if we could not see them. Maybe the sky was not gone. Maybe it had entered us because there was nowhere else to live. I do not remember the exact day we arrived. Arrival is too clean a word. The vessel stopped. The shouting changed. The air opened. Light fell on us, like judgment. Some kissed the boards. Some could not rise. Some stared at the land as if it were another kind of death. I looked up. The sky was there, wide, indifferent, beautiful, and I hated it. Then I loved it. Then I hated that I loved it. Morning lifted her child. He looked upward, blinking. For a moment, his face changed. Not happiness, not peace, something smaller. Recognition, as if some part of him remembered what the world had tried to steal. They took us from the vessel. They counted us, measured us, inspected us, as if the crossing had delivered cargo. But cargo does not remember. Cargo does not bury songs in the blood. Cargo does not whisper old names into new soil. Cargo does not survive long enough for its descendants to stand centuries later and say, I am here because someone endured the crossing without sky. I do not ask you to look away from the horror, but do not look only there. Look also at the hands that held other hands in the dark. Look at the mother who built a bridge from the word soon. Look at the child who believed the stars were following. Look at the people who carried whole worlds inside them when the world above them disappeared. They wanted labor, they wanted profit, they wanted obedience, but across that water came something they did not intend. A people unended, a memory unburied, a sky no darkness could fully confiscate. So, when you speak of the Middle Passage, do not speak of numbers only. Numbers are necessary, but numbers cannot hold a grandmother's voice. Numbers cannot hold the heat of the hold. Numbers cannot hold the first stolen glimpse of blue. Say the names when you know them. Mourn the names when you do not. And when the names are gone, listen for the harmonic beneath them. It is still there, low, human, unbroken. I remember the sky first, and I remember it last. Because even when I could not see it, I carried it. Because even when they took my shore, they could not take the fact that I had once belonged. Because before the crossing, before the chain, before the market, before the new name forced into my mouth, I was someone. I was loved. I was known. I came from a place where the stars remembered me. And they still do.
Epilogue. Recovered human harmonic. The crossing without sky. Classification. Witness fragment. Ancestral resonance. Unfinished grief. The archive notes. History often records the vessel, the tonnage, the route, the commerce, the law. But beneath every recorded crossing were unrecorded universes. A mother's breath, a child's question, a name held silently behind the teeth. Let this harmonic stand against erasure, not to reopen the wound for spectacle, but to remember that the wound had voices, and that some voices, though forced beneath the boards of history, continued to rise. Not to rewrite the past, but to remember it from beneath the stolen sky. Still, we listen where the darkness was deepest. Still, we gather the names the ledgers refused. Still, we traverse.